This is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, and review. Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Check us out. And don't forget about the Instagram at That Guy Jig. We're talking NFL today. The offseason continues to bring us gifts and treasures. Stefon Diggs finally gets out of Buffalo. Now we get to see who the problem really was. Was it Stefon Diggs or was it Josh Allen? See, because you kind of saw at the end of the season, you saw the transition from Stefon Diggs to everyone else. You saw the emergence of Dalton Kincaid, Knox, Shakur. These are receivers and tight ends that made a big splash. With the emergence of James Cook running the ball the way he did, this is going to be interesting. You can see why they gave away a maximum paid wide receiver. You give him away for a couple picks, but you don't have to pay him anymore. And now you have the full draft to draft another wide receiver. There's so many wide receivers in this year's draft. I don't think people really understand how deep of a draft it is. It's a very deep draft. And I understand, Malik Neighbors and Romeo Duze, Marvin Harrison Jr. These are the guys that get a lot of the attention. But I'm here to tell you that this class goes a lot deeper. What did Denzel say on training day? The shit gets deeper. It gets deeper. I mean, Brian Thompson. You got Mitchell from Texas. You got Ladd McConkey. And I'm telling you, Ladd McConkey is going to be a steal. Troy Franklin, Romeo Wilson, Ricky Parasel from Florida, and Jeremiah Burton from Alabama. These are just some extra names I'm just throwing out there, folks. Because all these guys are playmakers. And I haven't even named Keon Coleman. Big body wide receiver, Florida State. Who wouldn't love to throw the ball to him? But when you look at the Bills, they did not get better. There's no way we can say that they got better. They did not improve this offense, and you could honestly say the offense got worse. You lose both of your leading receivers in Stefon Diggs and Mr. Gabe Davis. So your roster now is completely different than what it was a year ago. And one might say this is the end of a championship window. You could see one saying that. And there's nothing anyone could really disagree with that because you traded away some of your best pieces offensively. You didn't bring anything in. You lost a lot on the defensive side of the ball. We cannot forget about that. The defensive side of the ball, they lost some people. Travarius White, Pryor, those are two of your leading guys in the secondary, and you're in a conference outside of the Patriots of teams that like to throw the ball around. As of right now, the receivers for the Buffalo Bills are Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuels, and Mac Hollins. I don't think this is going to work. As it looks right now, we're going to be looking at a very run heavy Josh Allen this year. I mean, I get it. Josh Allen has a great arm talent and great arm strength. If we're talking top 5 quarterbacks as far as just straight arm power, arm strength, just sheer athleticism, Josh Allen is up there at the top. He's up there with Patrick Mahomes. He's up there with Justin Herbert. I mean, he probably has one of the greatest arm talents we've seen. But if we're talking about what matters most, if we're talking about winning, I do not know. Can you put Josh Allen in the top 5? If we're being completely honest here, folks. I get it. Joe Burrow's been in and out of the lineup with injuries, so it's hard to really, get a real good measurement on him. Plus, he's only really had one terrific year, and he had a great, outstanding cast. Fine. If you want to give me that, we'll take it. But at what point do we start talking about Josh Allen as far as where he is in the NFL's elite quarterback range? Because we know he's not number one. This is probably the biggest gap of the number one quarterback and the number two quarterback that we've seen probably in NFL history. When you look at Patrick Mahomes versus the field, it's kind of different. It's kind of difficult. But if I had the gun at my head and they said, give me your top five right now, Patrick Mahomes, give me Tua. And keep in mind, 2 through 5 has no order. Has no order 2 through 5. But give me Mahomes, Tua. Give me Lamar. Give me C.J. Stroud. I like Jared Goff personally. And then Herbert. I think those right there would probably round out the top 5 as just overall quarterbacks. Taking stats out the picture because clearly, if we're going off stats, then, there's other people that would be in there. But I'm just going off top, just quarterbacks here. Give me Mahomes, Tua, Jackson, Goff, and Allen. Allen probably be 4 or 5. But then I would also put Herbert in there over him. I mean, they've basically done the same thing. They basically have won the same amount of big games, which is none. Herbert's going to have a revamped offense, a new coach around him, so we'll see what's going on in LA. But see, this is what's so crazy about this class of quarterback. There is no Brady versus Peyton. There is none of that. This is just Mahomes and whoever wants to try to catch up. But can you cut the mustard? That's what it's going to come down to. Can you cut the mustard to catch up to Patrick Mahomes? Because he's separating himself in a way where people are already putting him amongst the all-time greats. Saying that he's the greatest of all time. I don't know about that so far. And it's hard to really separate him from that conversation because of the amount of winning that he is doing. Like I said last year is probably the worst set of receivers that he's had in his years of the NFL, and it still resulted in a Super Bowl. Now they go out there and they get Hollywood Brown. They add more pieces to this team. Rashee Rice, hopefully he's able to play. He wanted to go be fast and furious. He wanted to go see life in the fast lane. No Joe Walsh. And he figured it out. But there's going to come a time where Patrick Mahomes will not have a Hall of Fame tight end. He will not have a Hall of Fame coach. And listen, I am not ignorant enough to say that is the only reason why he's successful. You need good players to be successful in the NFL. You can't just do it all by yourself. I understand that. I really understand that. But Aaron Rodgers is a very interesting topic when you want to bring up the greatest. One of the greatest. I get it. Arm talent, accuracy, the quarterback position alone, the talent's there. We can't deny Aaron Rodgers does not have the talent. Now, what he has in between his ears, we don't know. That's not really for me to talk about. I'm here to talk about sports. In the world of football, Aaron Rodgers probably is one of the more elite quarterbacks to ever touch a pigskin. But we can't ignore the losing. And we also can't ignore the fact that Aaron Rodgers has had great talent. The excuse that people try to give Aaron Rodgers of not having as much talent as Tom Brady or any of that stuff, that goes to Peyton Manning. See, because before Peyton Manning went to Denver, he was in Indianapolis. He was just putting up stats. Because if we're being completely honest, in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, passing was not that important. You did not have to be an elite passer. You didn't have to throw for 4,000 yards to be successful as an offense. You know, one of the biggest gripes on Tom Brady is when Tom Brady won his first couple Super Bowls, he didn't throw that many touchdown passes. Well, it wasn't needed. And that's the problem when we start taking Mahomes and putting him over other players from the 2000s. Which really, there's only a couple that we're even talking about here. We're talking Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, maybe Phyllis Rivers. Just maybe. Michael Vick's in there. You know, but when you look at what I said about the Tom Brady and the stats, well, it wasn't needed. Because in 2002, when he won his first Super Bowl, there was only 4 quarterbacks that threw for over 4,000 yards that season. There was 10. There was 10, almost 12 last year in the NFL alone. So we're in a different era. We're in the era where your quarterback is going to throw the ball. You need someone, and that's why there's such a push for this year in the NFL draft to find your franchise quarterback. Because the last 2 drafts have not lived up to it. Sam Howell was told that he earned a chance to compete for the starting job. Well, that ship sailed so damn quick, he's still loading up his luggage to get on. They shipped Sam Howell up out of there. Traded. New team. New stepping stones. So that's why I believe there is such a big push for the quarterback this year. Because there's such a big gap between 1 and 2. And as I'm sitting here thinking about my top 5 list, I want to throw Aaron Rodgers in there. I'll throw Aaron Rodgers in there over Josh Allen as well. Just because what has Josh done? We are going to figure out what he's going to be able to do without Stefon Diggs. What he's going to be able to do without a number 1 receiver. A true number 1 receiver. Joe Brady's a great offensive coordinator, young mind. He's been successful in pretty much every place he's been. But this is going to be a new project. Because as a Buffalo Bills, you're asking, are we going to be a more run-heavy offense? You can't look at me with a straight face and say that we're going to be throwing the ball 30, 35 times a game with Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuels, Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. I just don't believe it. I believe what you will see now in Buffalo is a very balanced offense where they lean more of the run. They lean more of the QB run. If you look at the back half of last season, Josh Allen was very successful. And it wasn't because he was throwing the ball 50, 70, 80 times a game. Josh Allen threw 18 interceptions last year, folks. That's second in the NFL. Those are numbers that we cannot have. So for all the we don't need him, we need him. We're talking 186 yards passing, 203, 359, 169, 237. And the games where it was very, very, spread out even. We got to also remember he's running the ball 9 to 10 times a game the last 5. Attempts at 39, attempts at 38. Those were solid games. He also threw 2 interceptions those games. So we have to understand that sometimes the greater the quarterback, you must reel them in. You can't just, hey, Josh, go out there and sling the ball. Because clearly Josh can't handle that. He can't handle those responsibilities. Some of his best games were the one where he was not throwing the ball around all the time. I mean, there was multiple games last year where the guy threw the ball 40 fucking times. No offense to Josh Allen, but that's not going to win you any games. There's a game where he threw the ball 51 times. They lost that game. When you're throwing that ball that many times, guess what you're not doing? You're not wasting clock. You're not keeping the other offense off the field. I'm sorry, because you're not going 51 of 51. You're not going 42 of 51. You're not going 39 of 51. We're talking 29 of 51. We're talking 24, 27 of 51. A little bit over half. A little bit over 50%. So if I'm an offensive play caller, if I'm a head coach, what am I doing? The last 3 years I've tried to duel the Chiefs. I've tried to outduel them. I've tried to outduel the Cincinnati Bengals. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. We're not just talking about the regular season, folks. We're talking about postseason here. We're talking about 2020 when you threw the ball 50 times. When you threw the ball 50 times in 2020 and lost 38-24 to the Chiefs. We're talking about in 2021 when you threw the ball 37 times and lost to the Chiefs 42-36. We're talking about in 2022 when you threw the ball 42 times and you lost to the Bengals 27-10. We're talking about last year when you threw the ball 39 times and you lost to the Chiefs yet again. At what point do we realize that the enemy that we are looking for is no further than in the mirror? Yes. What did Michael Jackson once say? I'm starting with the man in the mirror. And finally, the Buffalo Bills are starting with the man in the mirror. That's what they're doing. And it's understandable. Because when you are able to run the ball, you're able to keep Joe Burrow off the field. You're able to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. Listen, Patrick Mahomes over and over and over again is just proving to people, I don't need much time. I just need time. I need enough time, not all the time. So it's going to take more than just keep away. It's going to be, you need to be effective. You need to put points on the board almost every other drive, especially when we're talking about playoff patty. I'm not talking regular season Mahomes. I'm talking postseason patty. When he has that look in his eyes, when he's running with his head to the side, when he has that little strut, when he's doing his hands, when he's moving his hands in a come here motion, 4 fingers. That's what I'm talking about. That's the guy that we're looking to beat. We're not looking to beat regular season, Pat. And with the Buffalo Bills making this move, I don't think they're even I think they're closing their door. Sometimes we must take a step back before we can go forward. And that's what they're doing, I believe. You take a step back, you get him some more receivers, some young, moldable receivers. Sometimes them veteran wide receivers, those open air boys, they know one thing: me, 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 and me. That's all they know. So maybe Stefon Diggs was the problem. I don't believe it. But in the sense of, why target one man when I can spread it around evenly? That's understandable if it works. But let's look at the flip side. If Stefon Diggs puts the Houston Texans over the hump, how many more wide receivers do we go through in Buffalo before we say Josh Allen is the problem? Huh? Because that's where we are starting to approach. Josh Allen is the problem. If Stefon Diggs can help the Houston Texans take that next step, because right now that division is theirs to lose. That division is so Houston Texans that I bet it's a very, very, it's high probability that they win that division. When you add Stefon Diggs with Nico, Tank Dell, my God, who is covering that? Tank Dell took the NFL by storm before he got hurt last year, folks. Nico Collins, he showed the world he's a number one. Now you bring in a true number one. You bring in a wide receiver that wants the ball. He wants the ball in clutch situations. He wants the ball, and he just wants the ball. He's a playmaker. You bring him to this offense, now we are cooking with good grease. You bring in Joe Mixon. So now when teams think they can just pin their ears back and bring the blitz just to go ahead and get rid of this pass game, now you got somebody leaking out the flats. Now you got somebody when defenses go nickel or dime package, you can just ram it down their throats. The Houston Texans look serious. Their defense is back. That was a very formidable defense last year, folks. Houston, we have liftoff. That's what's going on down there. And I think when you have the extra motivation as a player of you don't want to be blamed for the failure, I think that's when things become a little bit more dangerous. And that's what we're seeing. Stefon Diggs was cast out of Buffalo as the problem. He was cast out of Minnesota as the problem. Stefon, if you get cast out of the Texans because they did you a favor and they took off the remaining of your contract, so you only have 1 year. This is a prove-it year for Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs, you ball out, a contender comes and gets you, you might end up with the Chiefs. You could end up with the Bengals. You could end up with the Ravens. This is what I know. One thing for true and two things for certain. The Buffalo Bills wanted Stefon Diggs out of the office so bad that they said you can request a trade to any team except for the Kansas City Chiefs. Folks, the NFL does not do that. That means get the fuck out of here. We don't want you. We don't need you. That's what they told Stefon. And if you don't believe it, look at the actions. Look at the actions. Lamar Jackson requests for a trade. What do? They sit him down. They say, Lamar, we're going to get you your money. We're going to get you some playmakers. Calm down. Help is on the way. What happened with this foot? They opened the door for you. You asked for a trade. You asked to leave. I just want to go home. They sent you home. They sent you home. You are on a prove-it year, my friend. And I just believe there's no way with Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon. I just don't believe this fails. I just don't believe this fails. I think the Texans are going to make a lot of noise. I think they're the only team in Texas that actually wants to be better. Jerry Jones talks about all this glory hole he wants, but he's not going to get any glory hole by letting top receivers come to the state and they're not coming to your team. Dak Prescott needs some help. He needs some help. He clearly doesn't have enough. There's a big drop between CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, folks. Big drop. But this is all the NFL offseason, folks. And we're not even at the draft yet. Remember, I still think Kyler Murray gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings. And until it doesn't happen, it can happen. And just like this can happen, you can subscribe, rate, and review to That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and then we can all be friends. Shout out to South Carolina women's basketball, and shout out to Iowa women's basketball. The national championship is set. The next episode will be called The State of College Athletics. Make sure you tune in, and also make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend, and make sure that they subscribe so that way we can all be friends, man. And once again, this is That Guy Jig, and I am him, JIG. Peace.